Hey, I thought I'd take a second and show how to create this periodic index returns type chart, which was probably made most famous by Callan. Essentially, it's showing the calendar years across the top, sorting different asset classes. You can do the same thing with sectors or asset classes in a portfolio or that sort of thing. I've had to do it in the past. It's a little easier to do now in Excel with some of the dynamic arrays that you can use. You also, ideally, you'd probably want to create this in Tableau, but you may not have Tableau, or you may be requested to create it in Excel. So I thought that would be the way I would go. So to get started, you typically will have this type of array from all kinds of performance systems. And so what you want to do is essentially stack rank these returns. That's our process is going to be first and foremost to use a function called large, which is going to look for an array and return a series of the biggest number in that array. So obviously you can see that I've got numbers that are very precise. If you had ties, this would break. You would essentially have to deal with ties. So you need some level of specificity in your data to do this. So essentially what that did was return 12.97, which is the tips return from 2011. If you look at the detail up here in the formula bar. So what I'm going to do now is turn that into an array by adding the sequence function inside of that array. So I add sequence, and I'm looking for 12 rows, or not 12, 11. I've got 11 different asset classes here. Okay, and so what that does is return the series stack ranked. So this series stack ranked, but it doesn't associate it with the class yet. So that's where we're gonna build this out in a separate cell and then just bring it back together. So now what I'm going to do is look for this value. I'm going to use the XLOOKUP function, and I'm just going to look for that in. I'll just do it with my mouse here. Inside of that column, and I'm going to, while I'm at this, I'm going to go ahead and lock that 2 to 12 column. I'm not sure I did that in the other formula, but I'll fix that here in a second. So then the C2 to C12 is what it's going to return, and I'm going to fix that entirely because this is going to be precisely the same across the entire series. Now you can see that the color changed, and that's because I've kind of gone in here ahead of time, and because this is kind of a monotonous process, and just gone ahead and assigned color code to each cell based upon the leftmost cell. So in this case, I've got 11 different asset classes, and they all have a unique left value. If it was different, you would have to change this formula. But I'm just looking for those first two characters in the final value to show up, and then I'm applying that conditional formatting for each of those 11 different asset classes. Okay, so I've got the tips showing up. I'm going to go ahead and fix this 2 to 12 because I want that to be fixed in the column or in these rows, but not in the column. I want it to shift as we copy it over. Okay, so we've got that and that. Now we'll just do this piece by piece. We'll just copy this large function, which is going to be the value, and we'll put it into this cell where they have P2. Okay. And that gives me, that essentially takes away the reference to this cell here. And then we're going to go ahead and add the same value to the end of that formula. And we'll just control paste the same value. And that's going to give us the asset class followed by the actual return stack ranked from top to bottom. And you can see the conditional formatting is kicking in here. But there's a couple problems that we have to deal with. The first being the spacing. We don't want them to be running up against each other. We'd like to put a thing in there, a carriage return, and so we can do that with the character function. So we just use character 10, and we put the ampersands to kind of concatenate the values together. And what that does is push that value down to the next the next row. And then finally, we want to add some formatting to that number because we don't like the 12.97. We don't need that much detail in our chart. And so what we're going to do there is wrap this in the text function. And to do that, we're going to use 0.0. And there's a little bit of a trick here because these values are whole numbers and not percents. So if you use that backslash, it will format that into a percentage and make it look better on the screen. So then it's essentially, otherwise it would be 1300%, which would not be what we were looking for. And so then I should be able to, at this point, move that back to the appropriate row. Place that formula there. And now this should be representative of 2011. We want to scroll over and kind of spot check our data. Go ahead and delete that one. So we've got, oh, I'm still too far over. So in this case, we've got 13% with tips on the top and emerging at the bottom with 18.8. Let's go ahead and copy over our next one, 19.1, emerging at the top this year, which looks to be good. 3.7 and 0.6 for commodities across the bottom. And additionally, I added some white borders to these to make it kind of pop out a little bit better. Inside of the formatting here, you can change the line color and set your grids to all borders. I've already done that, so it looks a little cleaner that way. Okay, and I missed a year. So finally, what I also did was add a value here just to kind of put like a legend inside of the field. So to do that, I've got the same conditional formatting that I have in the other values, but I'm just looking for I'm just returning it. And I did something else here with some custom formatting. I didn't want the text to show up, so I just added 3 semicolons inside of the custom formatting to make it look like a legend. And then a couple of other things I did was just add a spacing. So I'm just going to add these values here so that it kind of looks more like a legend. Kind of blow that up just a little bit. And then I also thought it would be useful to add some sparklines. You might want to play with your spacing just to see what you like. But in this case, I'm just going to add them right here. So the sparklines kind of show what each series does over time. So in that case, what I need to do is scroll over to the place where I want to put the sparklines. Go into the insert, look for sparklines. I'm going to use a column here. And for the data, I have to scroll back over to my original data. Click OK. And we'll see if that showed up correctly. That does look pretty good. So one thing I would recommend you do is change the axis on these to be consistent so that you can kind of see the differences in the various asset classes. So you see the tips here have not a lot of downside, same with the aggregate bonds, but there's also limited upside capture. So by fixing that, that axis, you're going to get a better view. And I also like to change the sparkline color and change I like the high and low point to kind of stand out, so you can kind of choose whatever color schema you like, but probably don't want it to be too close to what you're seeing over here. I'm not sure if I'm capturing that yet right now or not, but this is essentially the process. And once you clean it up and change some fonts, add a couple border rows, put some formatting on the top, this is what you get. You can't do anything interactive with this, but it is relatively dynamic, and you could add to it just by inserting another column and copying over your value, making sure that you're referencing the correct array. So to do that same thing inside of Tableau, I would first recommend adding ranks to the values, because you want your it's challenging doing ranks inside of you can't do fixed calculations with ranks, so the table calcs make it tricky. So I recommend coming into Tableau Prep and adding those return ranks first. It just makes your process a little easier, and you have to kind of unpivot your data, transform it into a cleaner type data where you've got the return rank, the return, the year, and the group. You can do that with Tableau Prep relatively easily. Building it is a little bit more challenging, but it's obviously more powerful once you build it out, because you can do things like showcase each period, and you can have embedded vizzes inside of there to see over time what each class does. So anyway, I hope that was helpful, but if you have questions, feel free to reach out. Take care. Thanks.